Matt, for the past 10 years or so, you've run your own production company, Matt Carroll Films. What triggered the decision to start your own production company?
Well, what triggered it was that Village, which I had the joint venture with, which was a company called Roadshow Curtin Carroll. Village started their plans for the Village Warner consortium, so they decided to get out of all local production. So basically they pulled the plug on Roadshow Curtin Carroll. So it wasn't something that I would have continued with it if Village had wanted to continue with it. I mean, it was very tough times working for a public company, because when I first started Roadshow Curtin Carroll, it was a privately owned company, but I'd been under, I don't know, about 5 years of a public company, and in those days, you know, the driving of all public companies is, you know, you've got to deliver a 20% profit margin. So that was very difficult to do, but we did it. But then Village then decided that they would bail out of all local production and put all their resources behind the Warner Village consortium. So they said they wanted to close down Roadshow Curtin Carroll, and so I had to set up my own production company, which I did.
Did you do that with some idea of what you were going to do with it? Did you have some?
Well, I'd always been a great believer in what I call the Enigma model, and what Roadshow Curtin Carroll was what I call the Enigma model, which is the David Putnam company, and so that you have a small boutique company that's driven by your story department. And so that's what Roadshow Curtin Carroll was. And then so what I tried to do is basically set that up again, but the environment was very tough at the time and continues to be tough, so that I've never been able to really rebuild that structure.
How did you begin as an independent? Did you have working capital? Did you finance that yourself, or did you have to borrow?
I'd largely financed it myself. I mean, obviously Roadshow Curtin Carroll was funded by Village at about the level that I think is required, and then when I started Matt Carroll Films, I didn't have that sort of capital, and it's basically struggled. Right, I mean, it's continued to exist and been productive, but basically it's struggled because of the lack of capital, and because you can't put up a business plan that makes sense to any investors.
Yes. So it was project by project.
Yeah, it becomes a project by project basis, and then I've got some other businesses that support it. So, and also because I'm very skilled at all sorts of things, that I when things get really tough, then I go out and sort of manage very large productions, which I've done. I mean, that's driven by not so much financial, well, it's driven by financial reasons, but I don't do anything. I mean, like if you take Farscape, for instance, I produced the first season, I set up Farscape because I've had a deep interest in science fiction and never thought that I'd actually get to produce science fiction. So I had a big dose of that.
You've had an awful lot of experience right across the board in film and television production. When you started at a mature stage of your business career, your independent company, what were some of the key lessons? You mentioned that you wanted to maintain that story department-driven company. What were some of the other things that you used to sustain in difficult times this new company?
Oh, well, financially, for the first sort of 4 years, I think with a bit of assistance from the Australian Film Commission and obviously earning a lot of money for setting things like Farscape up, I was able to maintain a story department. But to some extent, probably the ABC destroyed that, because an independent producer in terms of television, you're really relying on the ABC producing a reasonable portfolio and that you'll get your share of it. So in the past I'd always got my share of the ABC's commissions. So when the ABC sort of collapsed from nearly 100 hours a year to something like 12, I mean, that was a catastrophe for companies like mine. In other words, I mean, I remember one year where I, probably over more than a year, but I spent over $200,000 developing a project for the ABC, and then got caught in the revolving door, and it never went anywhere. So, you know, I may as well stood under the shower and ripped it up. So that's probably the worst case scenario.
And there was no way that you could reposition that project?
It was a project specially developed for the ABC, which they said they wanted. They put considerable funds into it, and I did. And, you know, you had to maintain the rights to it and all of that. It was it was a very good project. This still hasn't been done.
What are some of the things that you, let me ask you more detailed. With Matt Carroll Films now, do you have a set kind of trajectory of you want to work television and feature films and documentaries, or does it matter what you know, do you have a preference?
No, look, all my filmmaking career I've been a storyteller, so it's just about stories that I'm interested in telling. That's my interest, and getting lots of people to watch them, whether they're on television or whether they're in a movie house. That's what I'm about.
Do you have when you say you've maintained a story department, what does that consist of?
Well, I haven't in recent years because the industry hasn't been active enough to support it. So basically it requires, you know, because I'm not a writer, I need a story department, and in an ideal world that's a development budget and a head of department and a reader. So then essentially it's three of you, and so it's essential to find the right person to work with.
So it's quite expensive to maintain.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at Roadshow Coote and Carroll, for most of the time I had Sue Masters, who's now the head of drama at Channel 10. So, you know, that's the level of talent that you've got to have. So she's both a writer and an editor, and has gone on to have a very successful career. So you need that level of person with you if you're not a writer. That's what I call the enigma model.
Yes.